nobody saw this coming? What if the greatest battle before the flood was never the water at all? What if it happened years earlier, in complete silence, while an old man hammered beams under an empty sky, and not one soul understood what stood guard beside him? Genesis gives you 8 verses about Noah, and lets the rest go dark. But older Jewish writings, preserved outside most biblical canons, expanded that silence into a mystery Genesis never spells out. They called them the Watchers, and what they left behind was a war so complete it needed no armies, a rebellion with names attached. Long before the rain fell, something had already gone wrong in heaven itself. Genesis 6 says the sons of God saw the daughters of men and took them as wives, and giants appeared on the earth. 6 lines. That's all the official record allows itself, just enough to make you ask the one question it refuses to answer. Who were they, and what did they become? The Book of Enoch offers one of the earliest and most influential answers, and this isn't a fringe text. Scholars date portions of it to at least the 3rd century before Christ, older than the Roman Empire at its height. It was read openly in the Second Temple period and quoted by name in the Epistle of Jude, a book still in your Bible today. There, the Watchers are described as abandoning their appointed place and fathering a race of violent giants, the Nephilim, whose cruelty spread until it touched nearly everything alive. Not a metaphor, not poetry. A named rebellion, preserved for centuries in the Ethiopian church, long after most Western traditions had let it fall out of use. An old man, an empty sky, and a watching darkness. This is where the mystery begins. While the rest of the world ignored the warning, one man was given an instruction no one had ever received before: build a vessel large enough to survive what was coming. Beam after beam, the structure rose in plain sight of a world that had made up its mind not to believe him. He was not building it as alone as he thought. In this later narrative, the Nephilim watched from the hills above, not with curiosity, not yet with fear. At first they laughed at his talk of water falling from an empty sky, but as the ark grew taller, something ancient stirred in them, an instinct that recognized the shape of judgment before their minds could explain it. And that is when they decided the ark would not be allowed to finish. What follows is not found in Genesis, the Book of Enoch, or the Book of Jubilees. It is a later imaginative narrative, inspired by the themes those ancient texts leave behind. Why didn't they simply destroy it? Here is the question that should stop you cold. These were beings whose violence had spread across the earth, whose strength and appetite for corruption had become legendary, who had never in centuries of dominion been denied anything they wanted. A wooden vessel, unfinished and undefended, should have taken them minutes to erase. It didn't take them minutes. It didn't take them at all. Not because Noah was strong, not because the giants were careless, not because of luck. Because something had already been placed between the ark and the darkness, something that made an army of the most feared beings on earth stop and go no further. The guardian who said nothing. Then comes the night everything changes. The Nephilim move down from the hills, expecting an easy kill. Instead, they find a single figure standing before the vessel. No sword, no war cry, no soldiers, just stillness. He did not shine to comfort anyone. He shone the way lightning does the instant before it strikes a light that demands distance, not closeness. His feet were planted with a weight that suggested the ground understood who was standing on it. And in that stillness, the Nephilim felt something they had not felt in hundreds of years: recognition. Not of an enemy their size, of an authority older than themselves, one they remembered kneeling to before their corruption began. For the first time in their existence, the giants who feared nothing hesitated. The line that could not be crossed. A single flash cut a burning line into the dirt between the guardian and the giants. No thunder, no fire reaching the sky. Just a border, scorched into the earth with a message that needed no translation. This far and no further, while I remain before this vessel. The Nephilim froze mid-step. Not from fear of dying, these were beings who had never feared death. What stopped them was the weight of an authority they had no way to fight. They retreated into the trees, grinding their teeth, dragging a fury with nowhere left to go. Even rebellion, at its purest, understands when it has met something violence cannot move. The ark stood untouched, not by walls, not by weapons, by a decree already written before the first plank was cut. One who refused to believe it. But it wasn't over. One Nephilim older than the rest, scarred across centuries of unchallenged war, could not accept what the others already feared. He stayed behind, watching the Guardian from the ridgeline night after night, searching for a crack in that stillness. There was nothing, no hesitation, no fatigue, just the same unbroken calm, and that calm didn't calm him. It obsessed him. On the darkest night the valley had seen, he moved, silent for something his size, stepping exactly onto the place where the burning line had once scorched the ground. The mark had faded, but he remembered its position to the inch. Nothing happened. For one long, dangerous second, something like triumph crossed his ruined face. He believed the protection had failed. He took another step, then another, closer to a mistake he did not yet understand he was making. "You will not touch this." He reached out one massive, scarred hand toward the wooden beams. That was the exact moment everything changed. The Guardian moved not in fury, not with a raised weapon, but in a single motion that reordered the air instantly. Wind tore outward from him like something released rather than summoned. Dust rose in spirals, trees bent flat, and the giant's outstretched hand froze midair, paralyzed not by chains, not by fire, but by something with far more weight than either. Then the Guardian spoke, not shouted, not pleaded. A voice that sounded like more than one authority speaking through the same sound. "You will not touch this," not a warning. A decree, the kind that does not get repeated, because it does not need to be. The giant lunged anyway, driven by a pride that had never once tasted defeat. The light met him before his hand reached the wood. Not fire, not lightning. Something heavier than both. Divine authority made physical, and he was thrown backwards through the clearing like a dry branch in a wind that showed no mercy, crashing through the tree line. He rose from the wreckage of his own arrogance and understood, for the first time in his existence, that what had just hit him was restraint. Not the full weight of what the Guardian could do, just the edge of it. He did not come back. The door that was not closed by human hands. Weeks passed. The Nephilim did not return. Then the sky began to change, heavy, suffocating, waiting. The great door of the ark sealed shut with a sound like the closing of an entire age. Genesis says it was the Lord himself who shut that door. The rain fell like an ocean, remembering how to move. The Nephilim who remained ran for the hills and fought the water with bodies that had never lost to anything. And some, in pure desperation, charged toward the rising ark, refusing to drown in silence. The Guardian met them one final time, not in fury, in cold, sovereign finality. The ark lifted free of the ruined earth, while the last resistance of the old world was swallowed beneath it, the one no one saw leave. For 40 days, the Guardian stood on the last visible rock, watching the vessel drift toward the horizon, faithful to a post no one had asked him to hold. When the waters calmed and the ark found new ground, his light did not vanish in defeat. It withdrew the way, morning mist lifts, not extinguished, but simply no longer needed. He is never named in Genesis, never given a verse. Yet in this tradition, he stands as a symbol of God's unseen protection over his covenant, the part of the story no camera would ever have caught. What this story actually asks you. So here's the question the whole account has been building toward, and it isn't about giants. What if the battles you never saw mattered just as much as the ones you did? What if the reason you're still standing is that God has been protecting you in ways you've never once seen? If that means something to you, subscribe. There are more of these forgotten traditions still waiting to be found.